Welcome to another episode of Purkey Horror Picture Show. Now you may say, we did all the movies in science fiction double feature, the song that opens Rocky Horror Picture Show, and that is true. I decided to make this an ongoing series. For the rest of the series, I'm going to continue to do movies that might have been possible contenders for the science fiction double feature song. Meaning, these would have to be movies released before the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I believe was 1974 or 75. Anyway, before then. And they would have to fit into the category. So B-movies, sci-fi, cheesy horror, generally not really major releases for the time, maybe exploitation movies, anything like that. So, with that in mind, the first new Purkey Horror Picture Show feature is going to be X, the Man with the X-Ray Eyes from 1963.
August 14th, notes on experiment designated X. Experimental subject, myself, James Xavier.
X, the most fantastic experiment you have ever taken part in, presents Ray Milland in his most challenging role since his Academy Award-winning Lost Weekend.
All right, X, the Man with the X-Ray Eyes was directed by Roger Corman. Roger Corman, of course, is famous as a very, very prolific director and producer, mostly producer, but he did direct a lot of movies too, especially in the 50s and 60s. Mostly sci-fi, horror, B-movies, most famously known for things like the original Little Shop of Horrors. He did Bucket of Blood, which is a personal favorite of mine from that era as well. He did a whole bunch of the Edgar Allan Poe, like more gothic version of those movies that were made in the 60s with Vincent Price generally. I think he was involved in Easy Rider. He was involved in Death Race 2000. Whole bunch of other stuff. Lots of hippie stuff, lots of biker stuff, lots of B-movies. So if you look into Roger Corman, you can see, decades worth of B-movie material. So, X, the Man with the X-Ray Eyes, 1963, solid mad scientist movie. You don't get a lot of those anymore. This is one of the last really good ones. This has got Ray Milland, and Ray Milland was really known as, at this point, he's kind of one of those, you get a lot of these guys in sci-fi B-movies in this era. A lot of these aging Hollywood leading men of a certain age, 50s-ish so, kind of on their way down, and they end up in these kind of movies because they are still recognized and they have a name, but they're not big enough to really have major movies anymore. Probably some of his biggest movies he was in, I think he was in The Lost Weekend, and also I believe he was the star of Dial M for Murder by Hitchcock, so that's kind of probably one of his big roles. You also have Diane van der Vlies, I don't know how to say her name, and she plays Diana, I think, in this, and she's a co-scientist of his. Once again, that's another theme we've seen in a lot of these movies. You've got the main scientist who's going mad, and you've got a co-scientist as a woman, which is kind of cool that a lot of these old movies, they weren't necessarily just screaming heroines. And sure, they don't have leading roles. They were, sidelined to some degree, but they were main scientists. That's kind of cool. That's something. Other bit parts, you get Dick Miller, which is a favorite for people, especially from the Corman era. Dick Miller is a very well-known name, and later on became famous as somebody that would show up in almost every Joe Dante movie, especially known in Gremlins. So people loved Dick Miller. He's a very bit part in this movie. And then there's a fairly large secondary role played by good old Don Rickles. So, anyway, I'm not going to go through all the details of this movie. This movie is surprisingly dark, especially, and philosophical towards the ending for a movie of this sort, where a lot of these movies would lead to either an alien or a giant bug or monster, parading around at the end. This one gets a lot more philosophical and societal. I don't know if that's just because this happening in the 60s instead of the 50s, but it's definitely interesting in that aspect. Pretty basic concept, right? So this guy's a doctor, and a scientist, and he's working on these new eye drops that will allow for supervision. So he talks about how, people only have 10% of their vision that's being used, and there's all these other spectrums that they'd be able to see if they could tap into it. Kind of the idea of like tapping into all the aspects of your brain, same thing, like if you get all your brain power, you'd be able to do all this stuff. Same kind of thing with the vision. You could see a way more. You get to be able to do a lot more. So he tests it, and of course he tests it on himself. And at first you can just see the good aspects of it. You can see through, without an x-ray, you can actually see into a patient and diagnose them very clearly, as opposed to just guessing based on the shadows of a x-ray. And of course the funding isn't following him. They kind of think he's a crackpot, and he just goes on further and further to prove himself, and something happens, which I won't say exactly, but it causes him to basically go on the run. Another interesting aspect of this eye drop thing is they don't just, you would think he takes the eye drops, he gets supervision, and then they fade away and he has to take more eye drops. It kind of works like that, but it also is supposed to be kind of cumulative. So it's like his vision stays extra good, and as he takes more and more eye drops, it becomes more intense. And in a sense, there's a kind of a drug metaphor going on here. Maybe his addiction and change in personality based on this, and also kind of the way he becomes haunted because he can't see normally anymore. So the second third of this movie is pretty interesting, because when he's on the run, he kind of ends up as a sideshow freak kind of a guy, like a fortune teller kind of guy. And that's where he meets up with Mr. Don Rickles, who is obviously going to be playing kind of the sideshow barker, con man, scammer kind of dude. And originally he just kind of is presenting Mentallo, is what they call him, Mentallo.
All right, everybody. All right, gang. Here he is, Mentallo. Write your thoughts down here, and he will read them to you, just by pressing them against his forehead. Anything you want him to write, anything at all. How about my mother-in-law's will?
Which is basically our main character kind of just being like a mind reader, sideshow for people to come pay and just have them do little tricks, read their minds or know something about them. He does that, but then quickly the Don Rickles character discovers, oh, this guy might be more than I think he is. I'm gonna present him as a healer. And there's a really great scene where it's kind of like all the sideshow people are kind of on break, and they're all talking about what they would do if they had this power and whether it's real. And it's really cool because a lot of them are talking about, would they do good, would they do evil?
He's got a good act, that's all.
No. Yeah, an act. What else could it be? A man that could really see through things, he wouldn't be here. No, he wouldn't. He'd be something big, powerful. He'd be something special.
What would he be?
He'd know secrets. Secrets he could use. A hold on people, that's what he would have. Something to make them listen to him.
Is that what you think?
I never think. I eat. Maybe he could help keep people from hurting each other.
How?
By telling everybody everything? No secrets? What's anybody got to fight about?
Same things they've always fought about. Ideas, thoughts, differences.
I'd stop them. If I had your power, I'd stop them. I'd make them do things my way, or I'd hurt them all if I had your trick.
Trick? I thought you said it was real.
If man was real, he wouldn't be here.
And anyway, as he's becoming a healer, he's becoming more and more cursed and haunted by this power. He can't shut his eyes and shut out his vision. He can see right through his eyelids, so he never gets rest and he never gets any relief. And then the final third of the movie gets more and more surrealistic, and I won't really say what happens exactly, but there is a very memorable and surprisingly downbeat, quote, shock ending. And it's pretty cool for that era, pretty cool. I wouldn't say that X-Man with the Extra Eyes is like one of the best of the era. It's not a 5-star movie or anything. It's probably 3.5, solid 3.5, maybe up to 4 stars. I mean, I'd say probably go more to 3.5. Definitely very entertaining. If you've never seen it before, it's probably be a little more surprising to you than if you've seen it before. This is one I've seen a long time ago, and it had kind of stuck with me. And it's also regarded as one of the better Corman-directed movies, more cohesive than a lot of his stuff and less cheesy. It actually has some relatively solid sci-fi along with the cheese. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I would love to get suggestions of other Purkey Horror Picture Show nominees, anything from the very, very early era all the way up to the early 70s. I would love to have suggestions of some interesting B movies, sci-fi, horror, or exploitation that I might try. A couple of ones I have in the possible pipeline here is a Japanese one which I've never seen, which is Attack of the Mushroom People, I believe, which I'm interested in checking out. And also I recently picked up the Snowblood, I'm going to say this wrong. Snowblood Princess? I'm going to say it wrong. Snowblood, whatever. But it is the Japanese movies from the early 70s, female samurai movies, revenge movies, that essentially were the huge inspiration for Kill Bill. So I should be checking those. Snowblood Princess, I believe it is. Anyway, I'll be checking out those two movies here and possibly putting them in under the Purkey Horror Picture Show heading as well. Anyway, look forward to hearing from you soon. Goodbye.
To